So, hello and welcome. This is the VCD Roundtable episode number 41. We have November and it's VMware Explore time just again. We did this similarly from the Las Vegas event already. However, there we were still using our customer showroom. This time in Barcelona. Matthias just left this morning already, so he's already back home.
Yes, I'm already back in Vienna, but I consider myself being live from Barcelona.
And I'm still here in Barcelona, and a bunch of others are also still here from us, but not necessarily from the VCD Roundtable team. That being said, what do we want to cover today, Matthias?
I think what's new, what are the big messages from what we heard at VMware Barcelona, VMware Explore in Barcelona, and cover a bit what are changes, what are our thoughts around those changes, and what will that more or less be an advantage for enterprises and or service providers.
I think similar to what we have seen in Las Vegas, we have a VCF as the main topic around everything. We had a few more details around VCF 9 from what it looks like. It's going to be
If we
early
jump
next.
on the basics around VCF, there was one announcement around VVF, and that was the increase of the vSAN capacity per core.
Yes, that was increased for new licenses, and there for the additional value, there is also a minor price increase in the license.
Yeah, but now I think it's 250
Yes.
gigabytes per core instead of 100, so it's like an increase by 2.5. But I think that's an okayish number because with 32 cores per host, so two sockets, standard host, you have 8 terabytes of raw capacity per node. That sounds reasonable.
I think it makes sense. Should service providers hope that this would actually enable it now for service providers? That hasn't changed yet. VBF is still only for
Yeah,
commercial and corporate. I mean, in theory, strategic could buy it as well, and even in corporate, there are a few limitations. But in general, yeah. They also announced when we talk about basics, vSphere Enterprise Plus again as a subscription. So, because there was a bit of a complaint that if you were using standard, that was not good enough, and VVF was too much. So we now have a vSphere Enterprise Plus again. So that is more or less all from that perspective. There were a few announcements by the Tanzu business unit in regards to some product and packaging. Still a lot in the air there, and it's, from my perspective, also very interesting to watch that there is a lot of parallel, at least it seems like a lot of parallel development between the VCF business unit and the Tanzu business unit now, where they basically build the same features. I'm not sure what that's really going to mean for the future and how this is going to influence everything in the future. We have had meetings with the Tanzu business unit. We are waiting on some answers, especially for the service providers, on how the continued use of TKGM can be done. We got some preliminary is the word I was looking for. We got some preliminary answers, but I'm not yet thinking it is good to share because they are not in any way confirmed. So we will keep you posted on that. On the other side, private AI was a huge topic during the conference. I had several talks with Chris Wolf quickly about that, and it seems like there is more and more market interest around that, even though we haven't seen that much of it now, but that could be just because of our customers. What was an interesting story is that what we had before, like the Skyline solution within VMware, where you could actually automatically upload your logs and stuff like that and get them analyzed by them, is going to come back, but it's going to be on-prem. And it's basically going to use an AI model to do the analysis and the suggestions. That is one thing they are going to do very soon with AI, so that you can utilize that.
But that sounds very useful because a log file has a standardized format and a standardized phrasing. So that's a pretty cool approach.
And it solves the whole sovereign discussions we always had
Yeah.
with Skyline features, because many
Yeah.
people say it's like it's too much information being shared. We can't use that.
Mhm.
If that feature set comes now back on site, and basically the logic which was before within Broadcom is also coming into the on-site world, I think that is an interesting approach. How much resources this is going to need is still up. But I think this is, at least when we look at the VCF type of customers, this is going to be, if they are going to really do this integrated with all the other log storage and everything else, they potentially don't need that much, at least from a storage perspective. It's then more or less, if they build it correctly, it's more or less a compute story on how to analyze it and stuff like that. So,
but we will see. I hope we will see some benchmarks around that topic in the near future, and then we have real numbers.
yeah, and that could be good for service providers as well. The other thing which they announced, which I think is for service providers even more important, is since a couple of months, the all the knowledge bases, documentation, live fire information, a lot of information from and tribal knowledge from within VMware has been put into an LLM, so that it is actually being used by the support already. So it's not currently that your support tickets are answered by AI, but basically the support engineers, as a first resort to everything, actually take your information and fire them against the AI engine to get some feedback and to get some model analysis and everything else. And it sounds like that more or less midterm future, we will get a similar functionality directly for at least the support partners, which would, from my understanding, include the service providers, at least those with white label, so that you can actually use exactly the same tools as the support there. And potentially that will speed up support procedures, because imagine you're actually struggling in your environment, that there is let's say a snapshot hanging, which just doesn't proceed anymore. Then you can basically ask that question in natural language against that engine, and that could actually still run on site. And then combine that with the Skyline methodology, that can really speed up support, reduce support effort in the long run, and at the same point in time will make self-service for support for customers far more feasible. And so I totally understand why Broadcom is heavily investing into that.
Yeah. And interesting, I think an interesting bullet on this one as well is from the customer, or for the customers, it's a faster time to solution. Because if you can do it with an engine which answers my questions for the basic troubleshooting procedures, it's a lot faster compared to, you need to open a ticket, the support comes back, they file a session like Teams, Zoom, whatever. So that takes a lot of time. Even if it's a SEF1, it takes like 10-15 minutes until the session starts on average. But most of those troubleshooting issues are not SEF1. So it's like a minor issue, and then you might wait for a few hours until support comes back.
They are not SEF1, but what I learned is in the beginning, they are only expecting that somewhere between 5 to 10% of the tickets could be automatically solved.
But even that is a large number.
Yeah, I find that number much more reasonable than a lot of other, I would say, scenarios you often hear around AI, where people completely overpromise and overdocument things. I think that is reasonable, and I think that's a realistic value, which I can believe that that's possible. And over time, it's potentially going to get bigger. But let's come back to something which is more in the service provider space, I think. I mean, these topics relate to the service providers as well. One of the big stories which we covered already in the past episodes is, how is the future for Cloud Director looking like? And So we have a bit more news in regards to what the vision is. And this is why I would call it a vision, even though engineering seems to be very, very optimistic that this is becoming reality. As always, I only believe in reality when we think about, for example, the switch from the Flash UI to the HTML5 UI. Between the engineering optimism and the reality in the end was, I think, 1.5, 2 years. So
I wiped that from my memory completely.
So it's going to be interesting if that is real. And I'm actually also not sure how much of the timelines we are allowed to share. I think we should be good with most of the other things. So 9.0, which is due to come out early next year, somewhere, whenever, is going to have a partial multi-tenant feature already, but that multi-tenant feature is single tenant per workload domain. So that is a scenario where you can actually leverage a workload domain and make it a tenant.
I think they call it soft tenancy or something like that.
There are a few other things which are going to change with that as well. So some of the conceptual changes which we also will see in 9.0, and it's going to be interesting how that's going to work with VCD then, is that they put additional layers on top of NSX so that specific configurations do not require any NSX management, and not required that you have to go into the NSX manager anymore. Big question again is going to be what happens. Can I then modify them in the manager if I want to have something different? If I make a modification, can I then still use the other UI? So there is a ton of open questions, but I think it's going to be, as much as we always want to have the nitty-gritty detailed user ability to make every small tiny change. For the John Doe customer, and we have more John Doe customers now on VCF, I think that might be an easier approach if they can just say, hey, I need some networks, I need a bit of routing, and be more descriptive, and then the system just deploys whatever they need versus them having to mess around in the systems. I think from that perspective, it's a good approach. And in reality, VCD does nothing different. The other thing which they told us already is that there is going to be a change in how resources are going to be handled in VCF in the future.
My beloved resource pools will disappear.
Yeah, but Matthias, we all know from all the, you and I
agree,
have run enough performance troubleshooting at customers. We have run enough optimize and scale classes. We have run enough whiteboard sessions with customers trying to explain to them what a resource pool is, and more important, what a resource pool is.
But I will say it a last time. A resource pool is not a folder.
And as I haven't taught vSphere ICM anymore, I think the last one was 6 or 7. I think 7 still had the slide in there where it was still set for organizational structure. Is that gone in here?
But you could in theory interpret it a bit different, whatever. But I said it one last time. But the new part will be namespaces. I think that's the name for it. And so we don't know how that really looks like and how it will work and how resource management will be done using namespaces. My opinion is resource pools and the whole resource management for virtual machines within an ESXi host and the vSphere infrastructure is a major feature and works unbelievable great. So I think the development team is aware that the resource management for virtual machine is key for infrastructures and stick within the performance SLAs. So I hope they will do a lot of testing that namespaces will provide a similar functionality, which just works differently.
Yeah. So one of the other discussions is how is the conversion, migration, however it's going to be called, happening. What we definitely know, it's a migration. And I would honestly leave it like that, because it's not just going to be, hey, your VCD is going to be, you run an upgrade procedure and then you are in the new world. there is going to be a migration, there is going to be additional steps and work going to be needed. But to be realistic, you don't need to think about that before, at least according to everything said, before the next VCF version comes out, which would be then 9.1. And if that's still going to be called 9.1 by then is a different story. But that would be more or less the first thing you could actually migrate to. 9.0 just coming out, you can actually calculate for yourself what potentially might be a reasonable time frame when this is going to happen for you in the first place. So don't be too worried about it at the moment. And my personal expectation, even that version is not going to be really fully feature parity, as we have seen with the H5 UI, and as we have seen with V2T migration, and as we have seen with VRA 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8 scenarios. It's typically the devil is in a lot of details. And so.
But what I like in the messaging from Broadcom is that they announced what is the name, a assessment tool for VCF 9, or readiness assessment validation. I forgot the name. So there is a tool coming. There's a tool on the horizon which is meant to support us to actually validate if the infrastructure is ready. That's my interpretation, ready to be migrated, however that process will look like, to VCF 9. And I think what we heard and saw from Broadcom in the past, as soon as the tool is available, and many customers hopefully will use it right in the beginning, I hope that they provide feedback to Broadcom, enabling the development team to add features or rebuild a few things to serve the needs better. So that's something I think is very good in the announcement.
Yeah. Another part for VCF 9, it seems like, or it sounds like, a lot of the restrictions which you currently have in VCF are going to be gone. Most importantly, the storage restrictions you currently have in place. And as much as people can, and I had more than one discussion here during Explore around whether I like that or not, I think for Broadcom to get the adoption of VCF up, that's actually a good step in the right direction, because people who have just renewed their storage system still want to go to VCF, and currently they would be left out because they would at least need to have the management domain, and it only works if storage has certain criteria fulfilled. It sounds like that they opened that up more or less completely. Again, nothing is yet final, so we can't really see behind the curtains on those parts. But it sounds like it's going to be a lot less restrictive, if not completely open. And I think this will drive even more people towards utilizing VCF 9 as quickly as possible. Because every time, and I had also at least a few customer meetings here on the enterprise side, besides all the meetings we had with service providers, just the features from a security perspective, update management, password management, certificate management, is for many commercial and enterprise customers, not commercial, corporate and enterprise customers, is a good enough reason to thoroughly think about going there. Because with all the new security regulations and everything else we have out there, these things become more and more an issue and become harder and harder to manage. So I think that's also enabling a lot of good things there. So I think you could see here VCF is going to be the future. The conference overall, what was your feeling about? Because I think that covers more or less the majority of topics we can share around cloud.
So the conference overall, honestly speaking, I haven't seen the real attendance numbers.
Nothing was ever published for Vegas, so I'm not expecting anything for Las Vegas.
So I think it's like 3,200, 3,500-ish. That's a bit disappointing. having just a few people over attending, because still I think that the networking and talking with each other about the different topics is the biggest takeaway from a conference. We will see what the future will bring. In the recap they shared via email today, they had a link for VMware Explore 2025. So they didn't announce a date for Europe, but there is a link which enables you to subscribe a newsletter or something. I think Explore, it was overall a bit disappointing, right? Just a few sessions, less people, less events, smaller expo. Everything was a bit smaller. And so what I really miss is just chatting with the folks about the topic. Yeah, that's my overall impression. So
however, what we shouldn't forget in the discussion about the number of attendees. So on one end, we are missing the complete end user computing story.
true.
Which is, I think, or which was in Europe even more relevant than in the US. I always had the feeling that VMworld or VMware Explore US was far not as much VDI as Europe was. So that was completely missing. The other part is, at least from what we heard from in our Middle East sessions, is Middle East alone is expecting that they were missing approximately 400 to 500 attendees who couldn't make it due to the weather, because Emirates had, I think, from what I heard, 3 flights returned.
Because of bad condition over the weekend, wind and rain and
and they couldn't bring. They said the risk was too high with an A380 in Barcelona.
Yeah.
So that also actually impacted the overall amount of people. We all heard it's like we had tons of people at our dinner on Monday who actually were planned to be there Monday morning and did not arrive just short ahead of the dinner. So, and this is what you heard from many other events as well. Many people were stuck, many people were delayed, and that leads to the fact that some people then even say, okay, then I'm not going. So it's 3,200, 500, somewhere in that range was the numbers we heard of the weekend from Broadcom in internal talks. I think the actual attendance numbers in Barcelona might have been even much lower than that. We will see if we ever get any numbers. I'm still looking forward what they are going to announce for Europe, because US has dates and location. And again, as I said a few times during the last couple of days, it could also be that Europe is actually not a full-blown conference in the future anymore, and just actually more like a repetition on what is done in Vegas in a shorter format or something like that. Nevertheless, we will know once they give us the information. And I'm honest, if I was short ahead of saying I'm early. I'm honest. This doesn't work for anyone who is not German and has never seen the video. If you are German, then if you're German speaking, then try to find a video. I'm early. Ich bin ehrlich. No, but nevertheless, I think having
what are you thinking about?
What are you thinking about? Yeah, same direction. No, I think Europe would be great. Again, having a conference here is great. Having it, no matter where it is, a bit earlier in the year would actually be sensible, not only because me not having my birthday anymore at the conference every year for the last, I think, 5+ years, but really getting it back into a earlier time frame, especially if it's Southern Europe, then it could be warm. This time we really get the full autumn.
Temperature was great. It was just a bit wet
and windy and everything else. So nevertheless, I think that more or less recaps it. I think still what you could also, and I mean, that's the reality on the other side. Whoever actually attended Explore was there to continue the VMware by Broadcom story. No one flies into Barcelona, buys a ticket, and does all of that just to actually leave the storyline in the first place. So I think that is a good point, is people were actually attending for a reason. That is also why I think the feedback questions, at least in some of the advisory boards, which I was in, is like, will you continue your journey with VMware by Broadcom, were a bit useless, because if you only ask the people who have spent a few $1,000 to attend the conference, when you include everything else, I'm not 100% sure if that makes any sense to really say this is the main fact or anything. But nevertheless, I think it's overall, we saw a lot of the usual partners, services partners, everything else. The advisory boards were all filled with people. Everybody was in discussions. Clearly, Broadcom understood that not everything was perfect in the last 12 months, but at least for the partners, whether it's reselling services or service providers, Broadcom kind of, in some of the advisory boards, made a few things clear. Is even though the rate of change is going to be a bit slower, but change is going to be a new constant. So whoever thinks that where we are now is going to be, now we are back in normal operations, another 2-3 years, then there might be a minor change, nothing else is going to happen anymore. Broadcom was very clear in the communication that at least for the next couple of years, we should all be agile and on our toes. There might be enough changes still to come, which could be very good. I mean, the changes they did so far were not necessarily, I mean, yes, some people don't like them, but overall, I think it's the best for VMware and the product line.
No, thing is, if we maybe combine what we heard VMware Explore US with what we heard VMware Explore Europe, and you combine the messaging, it's Broadcom sharing a very consistent vision and strategy with us as partners. There were just a few minor changes because of, I assume, feedback, and they just tweaked a few things. But I never heard such a straight and understandable strategy and clear strategy for the future. And I would say that makes perfect sense for me, because I think if you stick within the strategy and if you share Broadcom's vision, it is a change, yes, but a constant change and within a streamlined strategy. And that's the difference. Instead of jumping hoops and something changes over here and it's not aligned with something on the other side.
And I think it's overall, just to bring this more or less, maybe I think to the end, is I think the overall the overall scenario is, instead of VMware, which tried in the past more or less tries to please everybody by creating tons of variants of the same process and everything else, my opinion is that it is actually better this way, something straight. They try something, if it fails, they correct it and continue. But they are not going to stop on the journey. They are not going to look back on it. It's actually moving forward, and whatever needs to be changed will be changed as long as they see value in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, I think, good. Good. I think that's perfectly wrapping it up. Again, also because we see it just in the comments, people also, again, thanking us for the evening at the Hard Rock Cafe. Thanks for everybody who joined us there, because that what makes the event. And we hope wherever we are next year, we can find something special and do something special with the community again, like we did this year, and figure it out and see quite a few of our listeners and promoters all throughout the time. That being said, next episode is going to be recorded in 2 weeks' time or something like that. I think that means from the challenge days, I think in Munich, we might be then. if I don't miscalculate the weeks by now. So, and again, if you are a service provider, if you want to get hands-on experience with the product, challenge days, we have just a few seats left for Munich.
It's Munich.
Munich. For the Munich event, and we have more capacity in Phoenix, Arizona. However, we are seeing a good attendance count already there. But the beauty in Phoenix is the location we are most likely going to use. We have the ability to easily up the numbers, so that wouldn't be a problem. So we hope to see you at one of the events. We are also going to publish our 2025 schedule pretty soon as we have it. And up until then, stay tuned, stay agile, stay connected,
and keep automating.
See?
Thanks for listening, guys. See you
Thank
around.
you. Bye.